All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another future-focused weekly update where hopefully I'm doing my job keeping you 10 steps ahead of the intersection of business, technology, and human experience. Thanks, everybody, for listening, watching, however you consume this. Please do the usual social things. If you find it valuable, share, like, rate, all that stuff. I want to jump straight into it because I've got quite a few things to talk about today, and there's a couple big ones that one I actually just caught before I hit record here that I'm still processing. So you get to hear me process through it live a little bit. But anyway, let's get to the first one, which if you hadn't been following, this week, Elon Musk was excited to announce Grok 3. So Grok 3 was coming out. That is his latest XAI model. And it was, in true to Elon form, going to be the greatest, best, world-changing AI model that has ever hit the stage. It was going to change everything. And so it launched, and I got a chance to watch that and watch, its performance and some of the stuff. So let me give my honest reaction to it, because if you're, maybe you don't follow all the different model releases and all this other stuff, but there's been a lot of hype building up to this, that it was going to be, basically on par with ASI. This was going to be the AGI release, ASI, depending on who you talk to. And what it did deliver, what I will say is it did deliver on beating out benchmarks. So I'll talk about some of the things that I think are really valuable, and I'll also talk about some of my, and also really what does it mean for you as end users. So if you don't know what benchmarks are, if you're not somebody who's like a gaming nerd who used to watch all the video cards as the new video card came out, here it did this and it beat this and all this other stuff. All these AI models have these benchmarks that they're pressed against. How fast can it do different things? How well does it do things? How accurate is it with all this stuff? And then they can compare and stack rank all this stuff. And then there's also this other one that they have, and I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but there's a place that you can go and you can use a model, and it'll present you with two. It gives you responses from two, and you just pick which one did a better job, and you don't know which models it is. And it keeps that track, and then there's a list of which one's winning. And to be fair, Grok 3 is leading all of them right now. So it's kudos to the team for their hard work. Okay, and I say to the team of the developers, not necessarily patting Elon on the back for this, but kudos to his team, because they have developed and released the most powerful generative or omni model that is out there today, where it really seems to stand out, at least from the rankings or the benchmarks. It did a really good job in complex reasoning, mathematical skills, and coding. So, and notably, it wasn't just like a little bit better. It was significantly, I guess for me, where my mind wasn't blown by it is I've seen these ranking charts my entire life, because I'm a total computer geek and used to always sit and look at, oh, here's the new Pentium 2 processor, and here's how it ranks compared to the Pentium 1. You're like, whoa. And then it's like, oh, here's AMD. And so I'm used to watching these little charts go back and forth about which one's going to do it in these very, very structured environments. So it's better. Yes. Was I completely blown up? Like, did it have just orders of magnitude so high that you just went, this is like an AI model like no other? No, it didn't. Honestly, I was not all that impressed. I mean, I was impressed in that, okay, here's the next step in these AI models, but did it knock my socks off or blow my hair back? Not that I have any hair to blow back. Not really. I mean, overall, it was the next step in this. And if you really looked at the benchmarks and the charts that they show to compare it to, they were comparing it to like 4.0, which is not even OpenAI's latest model. Now, they might have compared it to 0.1, but I don't, if I remember right, they weren't comparing it to 0.3, which OpenAI is now rolling back. So you had to be really careful even how you were comparing it in the benchmarks. And that was one of the things that I was watching going, okay, you're notably better than models that have been around for a while. I mean, 4.0, if it is the one that they're comparing it to, or even 0.1, has been out for quite a bit. And OpenAI is talking about releasing 5, I think is the next one they're coming. So it's, let's just say I was not impressed. I really was not. I did not have my mind blown. I was impressed with the fact that, yeah, it is better. And yes, we're improving in the areas where these models have historically been extremely weak. And that's good, I guess. That's great. I think it'll be helpful if used in the right ways. It can be very beneficial for folks. So I don't want to knock it at all. But it was not what I was expecting. I mean, the way Elon had talked about this, I was expecting this thing to be doing cartwheels and circles and somersaults and all this other stuff over these other models. And the demo that I watched, I mean, they were doing standard stuff with a generative AI. They didn't show it in any sort of crazy use cases where you went, whoa, we've never seen AI be able to do this. Now, granted, I get, you can't necessarily pull that all out on release date. I just honestly was not terribly impressed. If you can't tell from my reaction to this, I just kind of went into it. I had a bunch of other stuff that I was planning on doing that night, and I blocked time off to go, I really want to see this, because based on the way it's been talked about, there better be something that kind of knocks me back a bit. And honestly, it didn't feel any different than when any of the other AI companies release their other AI latest models and go, ta-da. So if anything, my guess is this might just push some of the other AI companies to release their next version of the frontier model, if this even disrupts them enough to really care. Honestly, while the numbers were improved in certain areas fairly significantly, I don't know, given market penetration for some of these other ones, that anybody's going to go, oh, that's it. We were about to do a deal with OpenAI, but now we've seen Grok and it's blowing the smoke. It's tearing away from these old models. It's like, well, yeah, duh. So I don't know. I honestly don't know how the other companies are going to respond. Now, here's the one thing, though. So let me tell you, there was a little bit of a funny story in there. So you're watching the dev team sit there, the product team, and Elon's sitting there talking to him, and they're doing different examples, like, oh, let's see how it would do some research on this stuff, because it has a deep research equivalent. Like I said, maybe I've just been in the tech sphere so long that it didn't really razzle dazzle me, because I'm like, okay, you're going, point for point against your competitors. Here's what theirs does. Here's how ours do it. It's performing like you would expect. But what was really funny is one of the devs who's sitting there, one of the product team members, is like, oh yeah, like, let's do some research on you, Elon, and you're a gamer, right? Like, let's see how you do gaming. And so he starts doing a prompt on it, and you could kind of see the look on Elon's face as he's changing, because at first he's like, yeah, let's do that. And then you could see the look on his face change, and they don't let it finish and they quickly change. Now, the reason I'm laughing about that is Elon took some major heat for, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. He claimed to be like at the top of the leaderboards or whatever. And even in this demo, this is actually what flipped them turning off the deep research on it, was he made a comment about, yeah, well, if you want to see how good of a gamer I am, just look at the leaderboards. And then you saw the look on his face change, and things got quiet, and then they canceled it and did a new deep research prompt. But what was funny about it is, if you don't know, there was this whole, and I know this because of some of the YouTube channels I watch with my kids. He's supposedly one of the top players. He's high ranked on this certain game. I don't even know what game it is, but it came out, or there's evidence coming out, or there was, that he was paying somebody to play as him. And actually, he's not good at it at all. And they called him on it because he played publicly and he was making mistakes that somebody of that ranking just would not make. He was playing like a total noob. And the pro gamers called him out and were like, dude, nuh-uh. And then they started digging into it. And, cause all this. So it was actually really funny watching him squirm after he had suggested, yeah, like let's do some deep research on how great of a gamer I am. And I was like, uh-oh, the articles that it's going to come across are not going to be that I'm a great gamer, but that I hired somebody to play my account, have been boasting as them, and then I actually banned the guy who called me out on it on X and all this other stuff. So it's a rather entertaining scandal, I guess, if you want to, learn more about, but it was funny watching that. Now, here's the thing that I did think was neat watching XAI's model that I think we need to see more of. There's a caveat to it though. So one of the things that I thought it did a really good job of, that I was more impressed by this than even any of the stuff that they showed. Anything it did, there was a context window that was flying through showing its reasoning. So the term for it is XAI, or explainable AI, not XAI like his XAI, explainable AI, where it's actually producing its logic and showing you its logic. So as it's doing its research, you can see its line of thinking and its reasoning and how it's going through things. And all of that is then, you can go back and see it. So after it spits out its results, you can actually go back and look at what it did. Now, I think this is really great because one of the things that's a big problem with AI is it's been considered a black box in the past. And so you really had no idea how it was coming to its conclusions. So there was no way to audit where it went wrong. Should we be taking this seriously? Similar to what I talked about last week with research, academic research, they have to put the limitations and all that in a good research paper. Will have all that. So you can go back and look at it and go, now, do I agree with its conclusions? What was it actually using in its reasoning? Similar to that, its AI model sits and it fleshes all this out. So if you get a weird response, you can actually go back and look and go, how did it come to that conclusion? Should I actually be listening to this? Which I think is actually an indication of a really positive thing, going back to how jobs are going to change. Maybe an analyst's job won't be so much to go do the research. The analyst's job will be to go back and scour through its reasoning and make sure that, is this valid? Like, did it actually do what it should do? Which would be a much more interesting job than Googling stuff. So I really, really appreciated that. Here's where the caveat comes in, though, that made me go, was Elon very smugly said, I shouldn't say smugly because I don't want to frame him up a certain way, but he said it in a way that, was just kind of like wink, wink, nod, nod to all the competitors out there. He said, and here it's showing its reasoning and its line of thought, but don't think you'll be able to go there and see all of the details because some of that's proprietary to the model, which on one end, I understand, because if you've seen what DeepSeek did with OpenAI and all that, right, it basically copied what they did. And it's very easy to copy what an AI model does after it's been released. So in some ways, I understand the thinking of, well, we can't put all of our AI's reasoning out there, because if we can, you could just take that reasoning, give it to another AI model and basically train it, and within a day, have it be as smart as ours. So I get that. But then at the same time, it's like, well, but then how do you ever know if the reasoning you're reading is actually all there is to go on it? And if it's not all of it, then we still don't have explainable AI. So it does put us in this really healthy tension spot. I don't know if that's healthy, but this really tense spot of, shoot, like, we don't want to put all the details in because that puts us at risk. But we need to, because otherwise the explainable AI, it's not really explainable. It's not really explaining its logic. It's explaining most of it. It'd be like if you asked somebody, how'd you come to that conclusion? And they gave you a few of the big bullet points, but didn't really tell you what went on, which is fine with people because you can hold that person accountable. You can't hold an AI model accountable. So to me, that was one of those, I loved where it was going in terms of the UX, the way it worked, to say, I think more AI models should have that built in so that you can proof text what it's doing and actually see what it's doing. but it also doesn't necessarily help if it's only giving you a certain portion of it, because somebody on the back end then is determining, well, how much is it actually sharing? And are those other pieces auditable? Can you actually get to it? Is it just for protection of their IP? So if you're a client, you'd be able to get access to the full thing. I don't know. I don't have those details on it yet. So that's about all I have to say on Grok 3 at this point. If you're an everyday user and you have a model that you're comfortable with, should you run out and use Grok 3? No. I guess if you're in the decision making, is it worth at least seriously considering? Maybe. I've seen lots of people be like, I'll never use an AI that AI Elon's using. Like what? It's a good model. I'll say that. It's a good model. It is currently the frontier model now based on benchmarks. How long that lasts? Week, a month, couple months, maybe. I have no idea. And I think if anything, I really hope to see more of this explainable AI and its reasoning. Now, the crazy part is, if you watch how fast this thing moves, it gives you an idea of how fast AI works. Some poor analyst, as that job changes, is going to be the poor sucker who has to go through thousands of pages of reasoning to try and make sense of it. This is where AI is just going to start working so fast. It's like, yes, technically a human could see what it's doing. How on earth? I have no idea. So we'll see where it goes. But that's my honest reaction to Grok 3. Do I think it's going to change the world? No. Do I think we're near ASI or AGI? I don't even know. Depending on who you talk to, that doesn't mean anything. So to me, this is just the next advancement in AI models with some functionality that I think we need more of in AI. So there you go. That's what I think about that. All right. Now, this next one is one that threw me for a complete loop, especially because of some news that came out today. Because I also this week. So if you follow me for very long, you know that I talked about Google Willow and its quantum leap at the end of December 2024. And what was interesting was I never expected that video to perform as well as it did. It was kind of bonkers. And so I got to see all sorts of nitpicky, stuff and the critiques of all the internet trolls of the world, which was fun, I guess, a fun experience to say the least. But here's what caught my attention this week, which is why this made the top of my list. And now today something hit that made me go, what is going on here? So I talked about Google Willow back in December. It was making headlines for the fact it had done, I don't remember how many quadrillion years worth of computations in a matter of 15 minutes, blowing the minds of even the people who worked with the chip. They went on a lunch break and came back thinking they'd have to shut the thing. And we're like, oh my gosh, it did the whole thing. It was that kind of thing. So it really was mind-bending what it was able to do. And then I had even been thinking about this. And then it came up. I was watching TV with my kids earlier this week and I saw something on it. I'd been wondering, I'm like, what happened to Google Will? I have not heard much about it. So much so I was going to do some research on it and then include it in a future episode. Well, it just so happened this week, I came across something that said, like, what happened to Willow? And I dug into it and I was shocked. There's like nothing out there about this. Google Willow has been completely shut down. To the best of my knowledge, even from things I could find from Google, the program was killed. They killed the whole thing. And the whole thing was killed. There's a whole lot of detail that I dug into, and this one might feel a little bit like a episode of the X-Files. So I'll try not to get a little too zany on it, but there's some weird stuff going on. But ultimately what shut it down was an ethical hacker. So I'll explain the whole thing with this, and then you'll see why after I explain this, when I encountered what I encountered today, I went, what is going on here? So as I was watching this thing with my kids, they did a really good job of kind of breaking down what was going on with quantum chips. Because now that Google had gotten into the space more, this was technically their second quantum chip. So it wasn't their first, but this was like the orders of magnitude that I was expecting to see. Their second quantum chip was the orders of magnitude off their first that I was expecting to see from Grok 3 based on the way it was hyped up. I thought it was just going to be this quantum leap in orders of magnitude. It wasn't, but Google's chip was. And so they really started playing in the quantum sphere, but they aren't the only ones that have been messing around with quantum chips. And so I spent some time learning more about how it does what it does in the qubits, and it's insane. Honestly, it's a mind bender when you get into it. But one of the things that this documentary I was watching talked about was, and you can find this stuff, you probably need an AI deep research tool to help you find it, because there's not much out there on it, and probably for a good reason. But there were some weird things happening with these Google chips. There were weird noises in the data that at first presented themselves as noise, but suddenly these noises started to take shape in consistent patterns. And it wasn't just Google who was running into this. It was anybody who was doing anything with quantum chips was running into this, where the noise in the data patterns were starting to make consistent shapes. They're called glyphs. And linguists got involved in this because linguists were going, wait a minute, we've seen these glyphs before. These are ancient Mesopotamian, like we've seen these. They existed thousands of years ago in some of these ancient civilizations. Where did you get these? Strange stuff happening with this. And not just, oh, that's just one crackpot conspiracy. No, legitimately, they were pulling in experts. Panelists were coming in talking about, what are we discovering with these Google chips? What is it decoding that we did not even realize was there? Which for me, I'm kind of chuckling as I'm watching all this, because I don't shy away from my worldview and anything like that. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, of course. I mean, everything we know was created by an intelligent designer. Am I surprised that our latest and advanced technology would just start to recognize the patterns that already existed? Now, what's mind-bending is, how on earth did ancient civilizations thousands and thousands of years ago who didn't have quantum chips tap into that? Now, that's a conspiracy theory that I won't get into on this podcast. Maybe I'll talk about it with blurry creatures or something like that. But my point is that there's some really weird happenings. And this was so much so that people started talking like, have we actually unlocked quantum consciousness? And strange, like I said, it's like a Black Mirror, X-Files type thing was starting to go off. So that was already creating all sorts of, what have we touched? Should we be going down this path? Is this something that, have we gone too far? I mean, it was churning that perhaps the quantum chip was something that maybe we need to back off of, because we might be opening Pandora's box and we're not prepared for that. Then comes along an ethical hacker who steps into the ring and says, you need to shut this down. You need to shut this down. This is going to it is going to unlock Pandora's box, and you will not be able to close the lid once it's opened. And essentially what he described that led Google to shut down this project was, whether it's tied specifically to these glyphs or not is not the point. The point is, because of how quantum computing works and the level of complexity and what it's tapping into to be able to do what it needs to do, it's reaching a level where, if you think about traditional coding, it's regular compute, 0, 1s, there's bits, it's either on or off, and you're mixing and matching 1s and 0s into a complex pattern to be able to do something. And so if something glitches or there's a vulnerability, you can adjust it, you can change the code and close the vulnerability, because there's only two options. There's 1 and 0, and it's in a pattern. And so if there's a hole in the code, you just isolate that hole, close the hole. What he revealed to Google was, the problem with quantum computing and qubits is, because everything is in an infinite state of things, where there's a hole, which he identified there were. He's like, there are literal vulnerabilities in this, or ways you can, penetrate this. You can't close it, because in the quantum sphere, it's literally built into the fabric of the architecture. You can't close it. It's not like a building where you go, oh, we have a hole in the wall, just seal the hole. It's like, no, the hole is inherent to the whole design. You actually can't close it. It's just a hole. It will stay there forever. And so the problem is that anybody who finds that hole can then exploit it and do whatever to the whole system. Now, if this is getting too technical for you, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible so that you understand, like, oh, so basically this infinite compute power could be exploited by a bad actor, and there would be literally no way to stop it. None whatsoever. That was this ethical hacker's case. Was once this gets out, once it's, mainstream and people figure out how to hack it, you cannot prevent them from hacking it. And they will be able to do whatever they want once they do, because once they get in, it's like, I'm trying not to be too technical, but if you can get in and get system admin, you can do whatever you want. And so essentially what his point was, is there will be holes in the architecture of this whole way of doing compute that would allow people to get access to system admin. And there will be nothing you can do about it. You can't stop them. You can't protect them. You can't say, well, once they do, we'll block. They literally would have access to the whole thing. Now, you can imagine why that would make a technology company go, whoa, like, whoa. We got to back this truck up, because if we move forward with this and then things start being built on it and it's powering and into all of our technology grids, you're literally saying anybody who figures it out could get in and do whatever they want. And there would literally be no way of, it'd be like Neo in the Matrix. You can't stop him once he's in, because he is the Matrix and can take control of it and do whatever he wants with it. So you can see why Google would shut it down and go, all right, until we figure this out. They shut the program down. There was this big move, a very quiet, subtle move to say, how do we figure out how to contain this? Similar to nuclear weapons, it's kind of a, how do we contain quantum computing as a whole? Because that needs to be highly regulated. Now, you can disagree or agree with that, but you can imagine why once this got identified, it just quietly was like, shut the whole thing down. We need to figure out how to rein all this back in. We need to do all this other stuff, because this. So you got two major, just strange happenings with Willow. And then the fact it just evaporated off the face of the earth, the program just gone. And so I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting. So then right before I come to record this, I happen to jump on LinkedIn, and wouldn't you know it, today, Microsoft launches Majorana, I don't know, whatever. They launched their quantum chip. And I'm going, what? Did Microsoft like not get the memo? Do they not know? Was this so secretive that what happened with Google and shutting down their quantum program? Did nobody ever go to Microsoft and go, or did Microsoft not tell anybody they were working on a quantum chip? I just truly like had to sit back in my chair and go, okay, how is this now coming out? So I'm still digging into Microsoft's chip, but similar. I mean, it's their latest quantum chip. It's making headlines all over. Microsoft's now in the quantum space, all this stuff. And it does make me in some ways go, did the ethical hacker catch it too late? Like, have enough people already gotten into the quantum space that like Pandora's box is now open? It's just a matter of time. I don't know, to be honest with you. And I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Microsoft's, because now I'm so curious. I am so curious as to what the heck is going on? What is Microsoft doing? Will Microsoft follow the same path? Will Majorana suddenly just not be in the news anymore? Type of a thing. I don't know. This one's still so new, but it was so ironic that this week here I was curious about Google, came across what happened with Google, and you can go see if you want to see more details on the Google Willow thing. You can either, I think there's only one thing that I've seen that breaks down the whole thing. You can find the Google Willow ethical hacker, the hacker himself describing in more detail. If you want to get into all the technical ins and outs of all of it, you can do that. But you'll see it's a bit mind-bending. So anyway, that's another one of these, like, what is going on and what does this all, but it was fascinating. If you want to go down the rabbit trail, I would highly recommend looking into some of this stuff that quantum is unlocking here and why they're now backing it up. I guess in some ways it gives me hope that if we come across something that scares us enough, we will slow it down, which tells me that what we're doing with LLMs, despite all the hype around what it's going to do and how capable it is and all this stuff, it clearly isn't that dangerous that we're willing to, just keep pushing it forward. Because clearly there's still things that we go, nope, not doing it. Although maybe Microsoft's like, yeah, screw you, I'm doing it anyway. I don't know. So more to come on that. I will be watching the quantum sphere and keep you updated there. But that is the latest update on what, where one quantum is going dark and another one is rising from the ashes, I guess. All right. The third one had to do with an article that hit close to home for me as a dad, and actually just challenged me to think, just put some thought into this. And it was really unrelated to a bunch of stuff, but I think it would be valuable for really any parent. So, if you are a parent, you want to check this out. If you're potentially going to be a parent, if you have no thoughts on parenting and aren't a parent, I mean, maybe you jump to the next section. It's totally up to you. But Elon has been taking some heat recently for, I cannot remember the name of his, I probably wouldn't even be able to pronounce it. I'll just call him X because I know his son has the name X in it, or X is a part of his name. But he's been taking some heat for parading his young son with him wherever he goes. He's in the Oval Office with him and all this. And if you know anything about Elon, you also know that this is not his only child. He has a lot of children. He's on record talking about how he feels he has an obligation to help repopulate the earth, all this stuff. And I'm not commenting on any of that stuff other than just he's been taking some heat recently for how he's using his son X as, a way to try and humanize himself and, connect with people and potentially mislead or, manipulate, things like that. I really don't, again, if anything I've ever talked about with some of this stuff, I'm like, I don't know his heart, his motives. Am I a big fan of Musk? No. Do I support a lot of the stuff he's doing? No. But I don't know him. And so I don't want to throw stones at somebody that I really don't know. I have got major issues with talking smack about people when you really don't know them. And even if you do, you're still not them. So I guess that's my one commentary there is be careful what you say about people. Even if you think, oh, well, there's some random stranger, it's not helpful and it's not okay to do that. But that aside, the commentary on it actually made me pause for a little bit and think about it, because this can be, well, first of all, this was a bit of a sore spot for me because there were many times and still many times where I have experienced what it's like to feel like your parents are treating you like an extension of themselves, or they're using you for their own gain, and in ways that it's very difficult to point to and go, I don't like how this makes me feel. I feel like I'm a prop in your whatever it is you're doing. And so in some ways, I actually really resonated with the people who were calling him out, going, it's not okay to treat your kid this way, to use them as a prop, not only for you, it's just not a good look on you. It's not fair to your kid. And what is it sending what kind of message is it sending to your other kids? Because if you know anything about some of his other kids, there's some that he does not have a good relationship with at all. And I wanted to comment on this because I think it's something every parent needs to take really seriously when they think about not only the relationship they have with their kids, but how they represent their kids publicly, how they talk about their kids publicly, and the impact that that can have, and the responsibility you have as a parent to wield this very carefully. Now, if you follow me, and the reason I say this hit close to home, not only because of my own experience with my family, but then also I'm a dad of 8. And if you follow my content, if you've been around long, I don't hide the fact that I have 8 kids. I will talk about some of the lessons that I've learned or some of the things that I'm experiencing with my children. They are a large influence on my life. They help me see the world differently. They teach me new things all the time. But it did give me pause to do almost a self-examination of myself and go, hey, am I being very wise and discerning about how I'm thinking about my kids, and making sure that I'm not thinking of my kids in a way that is, exploitative in nature, and in a way that's exploitative in nature that can present itself as harmless or positive, or, if somebody said anything that you could easily go, oh, come on, you're just being overly sensitive. Now, I'm thinking about Elon's son. So let me illustrate this point, because I think it's something that every parent should consider. As he's out here doing all these things and he's parading his one son around with him, I can't help but think the message that sends to all his other kids of, clearly, this is the favored child. So even if you said, well, what he's doing, he's not doing anything harmful, I'm thinking to the other kids, this is clearly sending a message that this is the one I like the best. This is the one that I bring into the public eye. This is the one that best represents me and what I stand for. This is the one I'm most proud of. That has to be extremely painful to his other children to see that. I mean, you do not see Elon with his other kids all over the place. And whether he's publicly saying it or whether he's sending that message directly to his kids intentionally or not, I have no idea. But I know if I were one of his other kids, I would be pretty hurt by the whole thing, to be honest with you. I would feel pretty left out. And then I also think about the impact it has on his son, who, yes, is young now, but this is layering on a level of expectation to his child that is potentially crushing, absolutely crushing. Of now, okay, you're clearly the favored one. So now you got to live up to daddy's expectations. And if daddy wants something, you better make sure you're going to lose your spot in his good favor. And I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that I personally have lived and walked directly that I think a lot of times as parents, we just don't think about. And so I wanted to make a point to call this out as an encouragement for all parents, everybody in any sort of parental capacity, whether formally or informally, if you're a mentor or whatever, that you're being really careful that you are not treating your kids or the people that you're leading. Like I said, if you're not a official stepdad, mentor, parent, that you're not treating people underneath you, and I don't mean under hierarchically, but people you're leading as an extension of you. It is extremely destructive and unhealthy, and has a lot of really negative side effects that often go overlooked and underestimated in terms of the impact and the harm that they can have on people. And so and I get where the pressure can come from. And sometimes it might genuinely be, like I said, I don't know Elon. Maybe he truly does just love this little kid. He loves the letter X. This kid represents X. He's the youngest, all this stuff. And maybe out of a positive, what seems like a positive thing, he just really wants to lift this kid up and he loves having him with him. And what might be a genuinely positive thing can cause tremendous harm, not only on your other kids, but on the one you're doing this to. And I just wanted to kind of take a minute, not so much to critique Elon or to say, that what he's doing is terrible. Like, let's rip on Elon. Like, no. But honestly, when I read it, at first I kind of was like, yeah, it does kind of bug me that he does that. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, yeah, it's definitely something that I want to be really careful of. And I am extremely intentional and thoughtful about how I talk about my family and how I talk about my kids and how I involve them in things and making sure that they don't feel pressure to live up to daddy's expectations of what they think daddy wants out of them, because you can layer baggage on people without saying a word. And that's what really stood out to me with some of what I see with Elon is it may be coming from a place if he just loves his kid, but he doesn't realize his love and favor for one kid is really causing harm to his other kids, and the love and favor he's layering on his kid may actually end up, as his kid gets older, start to feel like a lead backpack that he has to carry around. And maybe he doesn't end up liking any of the things his dad is trying to vicariously live through him, but he feels like he can't step away from it because, well, dad wants this. Dad really loves this about me. And so that's just kind of the more thoughtful, reflective topic that popped up for me this week that I wanted to challenge not only myself, and that I spent some time on really thinking through, hey, how do I be intentional about this? Because I've got 8 kids and I don't want to, do something well-meaning that ends up really, one, harming my other kids unintentionally, or putting pressure or a burden on the one that I think I'm, shining a light on. And so I would encourage everybody who's in a parental capacity to do that same reflection. As you think about it, how are you building relationships? What are you encouraging with your kids? How are they involved in your life? And is it truly, are you taking into consideration what is in their best interest from all angles? Not just I'm being a good dad. Okay. But is how you're being a good dad potentially causing harm? And I guarantee all 8 of my kids at some point are going to come back and something I thought was, great, they're going to say, Dad, I really hated that. And that's going to be hard, and we'll work through it. And I think it's unavoidable that you're going to do stuff that, messes with your kids. I think it's just a matter of, are you doing everything you can to mitigate that risk? And are you being thoughtful and intentional about it? And if not, then maybe spend some time today doing that. Okay. Let me move on to the fourth, and then we'll wrap here. So the fourth was, you can look at the headlines at this. I kind of chuckled at this because it's funny that it happened with a lawyer. It's something I've been warning about with AI for a long time. So there's a lawyer who is in major hot water right now, and he is begging for mercy for what he did. Because essentially what he did was he had AI do his work for him. You can probably guess where this is going. So he trusted AI to put together his materials and all of his references and his case stuff and all the things that he did in court. And he got caught. And not like, oh, you shouldn't be using AI as a lawyer. That's not my point. My point is, especially as a lawyer, I have a fascination with the law. So this one really hit home for me because I love it. But when you're a lawyer and you're presenting your case and you're going, you must rule in favor of this because we have legal precedent coming from, and then you start referencing other things, those things have to be legitimate. Like it's not like corporate America where you can make arguments from made up stuff and people will go, okay, well, that makes sense. And it'll blow back on you if you do the same thing in corporate. But in legal, like, you're not just going to lose your job. You might lose your license to practice law there's some major consequences. And so anyway, this lawyer trusted AI to do his casework for him, put together his filings, all this other stuff. And the lid blew off that it was wrong. I mean, duh, like even the latest deep research tools aren't 100% accurate. And he clearly did not do his homework to make sure that, what he had was accurate and all this other stuff. And granted, I looked into some of this stuff. It's not like it was just making things up out of thin air. It wasn't that. It was just getting details wrong. It was combining different cases into a single case. It was drawing its own logical conclusions and merging that together into information instead of recognizing this is a situation you can't do that. You can't just go, well, these two cases happened, they're related, so let's just merge it together into one case and we'll take some of the details from the two and put it together. But unfortunately, he didn't do his homework. I'm guessing this would be a perfect example of somebody who went, I don't need legal analyst teams. I've just got a deep research tool. I'm just going to let it do that and probably I don't know this, so don't quote me on it. But this to me would be the line of thinking that I could absolutely see happening in a law firm. You're a small lawyer, and I don't remember all the details of the lawyer and all this stuff, but I'm framing out a use case. I can absolutely see a small law practice getting excited about AI and going, you know what? Do we really need these entry-level legal analysts and, people that are doing this workforce? Now we've got this deep research tool. We probably could just get rid of these people and just have the deep research tool do all this stuff for us. And perfect. Like, I know what I need. I'll just tell it what I need and it'll get it for me. And the misunderstanding of those people are not just going around gathering the information. It's their job to make sure it's the right information. It's their job to make sure that they're pulling it and things aren't getting messed up and all this other stuff. And you just short-circuited it and thought, we'll just use the AI. And you're the lawyer. You're too busy because legitimately you've got other things that you need to focus on. You're preparing for the case. You're preparing your arguments. You're preparing all this other stuff. You don't have time to sit and go through and validate and fact check and all this. And that's not a knock. That's the reality of work. That's why you had the analysts to do that work. And you just thought, I'll just shortcut this. And this is the kind of outcome you get. This is why I caution people. This is why I'm in meetings and board meetings all the time going, this will blow up in your face. This lawyer is in major, major hot water, may lose his entire practice, his ability to be a lawyer anywhere ever again, all for making a stupid mistake and being over dependent on AI and saying, yeah, what do we need people for? And doing this. Now, like I said, don't go, well, Christopher, I looked into it and that's not exactly what happened. That's not my point. My point is this pattern is a pattern I am seeing start to emerge all over the place. It's happening in smaller businesses. It's happening in large businesses. It's happening in Fortune 50 companies left and right, where people are going, this AI stuff, I mean, it's pretty great and it can do a lot of really great things. Maybe we just don't need people to do it, because what's really the harm in all of this? And this case right here is a bit of a clarion call to go watch it. And I have other examples of businesses I've advised that I've had to pull out of to say, fine, you don't want to take my advice and my caution. This is going to catch up to you, that have called me later and gone, now what do we do? And my response is, you're toast. Like, you start over. That's what you do. You're back to ground zero. You got to start over. And that may be the case for this lawyer. He may now have to say, well, I've been a lawyer for X number of years, but not anymore. All because I got a little too arrogant, a little too cocky with what AI could do. I overestimated its capability and thought I could get all the benefits without any of the accountability, and it blew up in his face. And what happens here is really actually kind of irrelevant. Well, actually, no, it is extremely relevant, because if he gets off scot-free, which I don't think he will, I mean, there's a good chance. And in some ways, I empathize with him, because I've just seen too many people who, they're not trying to be nefarious. We have this really stupid human tendency to think think we can beat the odds. We'll be the ones who figures this out. We'll be the one that beats the house. And it's like, doesn't work that way. So, I hope that the response to this, and I think I mentioned this last time, my concern is the response to this kind of stuff is, all of a sudden people start freaking out and going, don't use AI ever again. Like AI will destroy law. And then people overreact and they try and compliance their way out of it. That's not the point. Because could there easily have been a world where AI was involved in helping put together the briefing and the individual's job was similar to what I described in Grok 3, going back, making sure, hey, are these cases relevant? Are they the right ones? Are the details accurate? And it may be that in doing that, you find out this whole AI assistance is really not all that great when used on that broad scale. Everybody's going to have to go through that exercise, but there's no skipping that exercise. That's the thing. There's no skipping the exercise. You cannot. And if you do, it is going to blow up in your face. And it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, a doctor, a plumber, like it does not matter if you become over dependent on AI and try and short circuit critical thinking and accountability. It is going to eat your lunch. I 100% promise you. It might just take a while for you to realize it, and it might just hit you in a way that you never expected it. So with that, hopefully that makes people think twice. And I'll keep y'all updated on how things go. And you know what? If somebody does successfully short circuit accountability and critical thinking, I'll let you know. I'll eat my words, but I don't have any. I'm quite confident in the fact that that day will not come. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully you have a great weekend and a great rest of your week and whenever you listen to this. And with that, I will see you on the other side.